Leaked telemetry from the Arabian Sea has triggered a Pentagon strategic panic. At 5:44 a.m. 333-meter Nimitz-class Icon didn't just sustain damage, it was tactically liquidated. A precise hypersonic impact at frame 47. Targeting the one location defense systems were positioned to ignore 4 meters under the waterline. The sea didn't just enter, it poured in at terrifying speed, forcing the activate of war state logic in real time. This is the untold story of the 13 minutes that changed global power balance forever. It was a precise calculated hit that ripped open the carrier's portside hull at frame 47, 4 meters below the waterline. The massive 333-meter-long Nimitz-class behemoth, displacing over 100,000 tons and carrying nearly 90 aircraft with a crew of more than 5,000, began flooding it instantly as the sea poured in at terrifying speed. This moment marked a brutal escalation in the high-stakes naval showdown between Iran and the United States, echoing the dangerous tensions long associated with the Strait of Hormuz and open sea confrontations. For weeks, Iranian forces had launched wave after wave of missiles at the carrier, deliberately targeting its visible superstructure flight deck and parked aircraft to create dramatic images of destruction for the information war. Every previous attempt failed against the Abraham Lincoln's layered defenses. But this time, Iran changed the game entirely with ruthless cunning, aiming not for glory shots above the water, but for the one vulnerable point that could cripple the giant without needing total annihilation, the hull below the surface. The weapon was a hypersonic glide vehicle streaking at Mach 8 through the upper atmosphere on an unpredictable, continuously maneuvering path that defied traditional ballistic or cruise missile trajectories. It glided, twisted, and altered its geometry in ways that rendered the carrier's advanced Aegis combat system obsolete in real time. The Spy-6 radar locked on with just 74 seconds of warning. That narrow window proved fatal against a target shifting at such extreme velocity. Every SM-6 interceptor in the library was calibrated for threats slamming into the flight deck or island superstructure. When the fire control computer projected this missile's impact point 4 meters underwater, the system repeatedly flagged the engagement geometry as invalid. The intercept solutions literally pointed into the ocean itself. Time ran out while Aegis struggled with a problem it was never engineered to solve. At 6 seconds to impact, the close-in weapon system erupted in a desperate burst, but the Mach 8 projectile had already screamed past the intercept window. The warhead was no ordinary explosive. It was a focused, penetrating charge designed to punch a clean 1.4-meter hole through the hull plating and unleash its energy in a concentrated fury. The sound that tore through the ship was not a rolling explosion, but a single razor-sharp, concussive crack that vibrated instantly through every frame, bulkhead and deck plate from bow to stern. Every sailor aboard felt it in their bones before their ears even registered it. Flooding erupted in compartments 344, 346, and 348 at a staggering initial rate of 340 liters per second. Lieutenant Commander Diana Reeves, the carrier's battle-hardened damage control officer, stared at her monitoring board in the second deck center as 3 simultaneous flood alarms blared. She had been awake for 19 hours straight. In 4 seconds of frozen clarity, she shifted from shock to action, prioritizing the critical bulkhead at frame 52 that protected the forward engineering spaces and auxiliary propulsion. That barrier was rated for 40 tons of pressure. At the current rate, it faced catastrophic overload in just 11 minutes and 40 seconds. If it failed, the Abraham Lincoln would lose propulsion and become a sitting duck in hostile waters, 340 nautical miles from the nearest friendly port during a ceasefire, already fracturing under pressure. Reeves fired her initial assessment to the Combat Information Center. 3 compartments flooding frame 52 at immediate risk. Emergency damage control teams requested and counter-flooding assessment authorized. The reply came in 23 seconds, but it carried chilling news. 2 more hypersonic glide vehicles were inbound on different bearings, same lethal type. Iran had orchestrated a savage triple strike, the first to open the wound, the next 2 to hit, while the crew was distracted fighting for survival. This was not random aggression. It was a calculated bid to humiliate the world's most powerful navy by wounding its flagship and forcing it to limp away, weakening America's position in any ceasefire talks. The second missile struck at 5:47, tearing another breach at frame 71, 2 meters below the waterline. Compartments 568 and 570 flooded, immediately pushing the combined rate across 5 spaces to 580 liters per second. The ship developed a noticeable port list that climbed to 1.3 degrees within seconds. Damage control teams sealed 2 compartments by 5:51, while emergency pumps roared to life, dropping the rate to 390 liters per second. The list held at 1.8 degrees, but frame 52 pressure kept rising relentlessly toward the 40-ton limit. At 5:52, Reeves realized the pumps alone could not hold. She requested emergency counterflooding authorization. This desperate measure meant deliberately flooding starboard compartments 548 and 553 to create opposing pressure against the port side assault on frame 52. Captain Morrison approved at 5:53. The valves were manual, requiring crew members to physically enter the spaces. Petty Officer First Class Andre Coleman and Petty Officer Second Class Maria Santos volunteered, knowing the compartments would submerge in roughly 3 to 4 minutes after valves opened. They had mere windows to escape. Coleman reached his valve first and fought through rising water to complete 14 rotations. He cleared the hatch with only 13 seconds to spare as the compartment sealed and began filling. Santos followed with precise determination, ensuring full valve operation before escaping just in time. Their heroism bought precious moments. By 5:55, counter-pressure took effect. Frame 52 pressure, which had hit 38.4 tons and was still climbing, slowed dramatically. At 6:01, it peaked at 39.7 tons and finally began dropping as pumps gained the upper hand. The list stabilized at 2.1 degrees. The Abraham Lincoln was battered, flooding at a reduced rate, listing yet still fighting, still operational, refusing to sink. In the Combat Information Center, Rear Admiral Carver had been tracking launch signatures through passive sensors that captured the enemy guidance frequencies across all 3 flights. He now had precise fixes. Launch position Alpha on bearing 027 and Bravo on bearing 041. At 6:05, he authorized retaliation. 8 Tomahawk cruise missiles carried from the carrier's vertical launch cells at 6:06, launched from a ship still listing 2.1 degrees with active damage control ongoing and 2 hull breaches sealed but leaking. 4 Tomahawks hammered Alpha 4, struck Bravo. The Iranian launch sites that had dared to wound an American supercarrier vanished in fireballs between 6:44 and 6:47. The crews and infrastructure that planned this audacious below-the-waterline assault were obliterated before they could even report success. What Iran intended as a masterstroke, to flood and humiliate the USS Abraham Lincoln, instead ignited a ferocious American response. By 700, flight operations resumed despite the damage. The first FA-18 Super Hornet thundered off catapult number 2 at 7:02, clawing into the sky from a listing deck, still bearing scars of the attack. Lieutenant Commander Reeves logged the event in 4 stark sentences. 2 hull breaches at frames 47 and 71. 5 compartments compromised. Emergency counterflooding executed. Frame 52 integrity maintained, ship fully operational. She added a personal note praising Coleman and Santos, who had pushed their survival windows to the absolute limit and emerged victorious. This clash in the Arabian Sea highlights the raw intensity of modern naval warfare. where hypersonic weapons challenge even the most advanced carrier defenses, and where crew courage under extreme pressure decides survival. Iran's bold strike below the waterline was designed to exploit a doctrinal blind spot and force a damaged carrier to withdraw, shifting the balance in tense ceasefire negotiations. Instead, the Abraham Lincoln absorbed the blows, stabilized, struck back with devastating precision, and launched combat sorties from a wounded but defiant deck. The attack underscores the escalating dangers in key maritime choke points like the Strait of Hormuz, where anti-access strategies and precision strikes test the limits of superpower projection. U.S. forces demonstrated remarkable damage control discipline and retaliatory speed, turning a potential humiliation into a showcase of resilience. Yet the incident raises serious questions about vulnerability to maneuvering hypersonic threats and the future of carrier operations in contested waters. What do you think? Could this kind of below-the-waterline precision strike change how future naval battles are fought? Or does it prove that American carriers and their crews remain unmatched, even when hit hard? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you want to see more details on hypersonic defenses? Or should we dive deeper into the human stories of the damage control teams? And at the end of the day, does this clash make you believe the ceasefire will hold? Or are we heading toward even fiercer confrontations at sea? Let us know your take. Your voice helps drive the conversation on these critical global tensions. Stay tuned for more breaking updates from the front lines of this high-stakes naval drama. Click subscribe now. Don't miss a single moment of this historic journey. Your time is valuable. We promise analyses as sharp as reality itself. Stay vigilant, stay informed. We'll see you in the next video. Disclaimer: this video contains content generated or supported in whole or in part by artificial intelligence. This material is intended solely for simulation, illustration, and entertainment purposes. It does not represent real-world events, nor does it constitute political or military advice or verified information. Certain elements may be fictional, dramatized, or inaccurate. Viewers should not rely on this video as a credible source of information or as a basis for real-world decision-making.